Good morning, my name is Colin, I'm with the Reptile Barn. Welcome to episode 2 of Exploring Genetics. I know that last week I said I was going to be diving into all the different lines that there are. Lines of pastel, lines of axanthic, lines of scaleless and all that. However, we don't really have the snakes to represent most of those genes. And so I decided, especially after some feedback from several people, to try and, in the first couple episodes at least, stick to things that I can also be showing the snakes when we're talking about the genetics. So that's what we're going to do today. We are going to talk about 3 different recessive projects that have different genes that act in similar ways. So the first gene we ever got into was Desert Ghost. This is Chiara, a little holdback Desert Ghost from this year. She was one of the cleanest, most pretty Desert Ghosts we ever got. But Desert Ghost, as you can see, changes the color dramatically. The blacks are completely black, it's a true black, and then the what is normally the kind of brown tan color has turned yellow, and in adults that becomes almost more of a silvery color. It might kind of throw the pattern a little bit more wacky, but there's not really anything that I would say the Desert Ghost specifically does to the pattern. Anyways, so with Desert Ghosts, you have this gene, the Desert Ghost gene, which is recessive. There is also a gene called Desert, which doesn't look exactly like this, but you know it might be similar. That's a codom that the females are infertile. So more and more people are going towards Desert Ghost rather than the Desert gene. Even though with codoms you can make projects faster, if the females are infertile, it's kind of it's an iffy project. We much prefer the Desert Ghosts. The third gene that looks very similar is a pretty new gene that's out there. It might be Breeder Circle or someone who has it, and it's called Sahara. It looks very similar. I think it's going to prove to be a different gene. There are a couple little differences. I don't have one to show you, but I can show you Desert Ghosts. Awesome recessive project. There's some sweet combos out there. We hope to make some of them. So far, the only combo we've made is the Spider Desert Ghost, which are gorgeous. But yeah, there is the Desert Ghost. Next up, it's the Ultramel, or Ultramelanistic. Here's our little guy here. This animal has actually sold. We're going to be shipping him out soon. But the Ultramel is, it's not really an albino. It's, I guess you could call it a T-positive albino or tyrosinase positive. So it's not a true albino where the tyrosinase has been removed. The tyrosinase is still there, which is why you don't see, white on this snake. There's at least a little bit of pigment there. The yellows are there, the browns are there. There is a gene called caramel albino, which has been worked with extensively, that looks very, very similar to the Ultramels. And again, it's a T-positive albino, at least in my mind. That's what it is. But it has some problems where many of the babies have some kinking. That's where there are some deformities in the spine. And sometimes it's very minor and the animal's fine, but other times it's extreme and the animal does not survive. So we prefer to work with the Ultramels rather than the caramel albinos for that reason. There's also a gene called Monarch. Doesn't look exactly the same. It's a little darker. I would say a little higher contrast. Absolutely gorgeous animals. But this kind of look to it. So Ultramel, caramel albino, and Monarchs. Beautiful, beautiful snakes to work with. And again, recessive. And we like recessive genes here. Anyways, moving on. This is our boy Jonas. He is a Lavender Albino. Again, this is a recessive gene. It's been around for a while. Beautiful animals. And he is not quite started his color transformation yet. Maybe a little bit up towards the head and neck. But it's an amazing coloration. I know the camera won't pick it up very well. I mean, it's just a yellow and white snake. Just gorgeous. And as he ages, the white will turn lavender, which is why he's called a lavender albino. But very, very similar to just a regular albino as a baby. And, you know, a candy and a toffee. There's lots of genes that they're not the same gene. They are different, but they all act very similar to each other. It's a T negative albino. So you see the red eyes, and just stunning animal. These, and I'd say pieds, just blow everyone away. Another recessive. You'll find, if you watch us for any length of time, we're definitely a fan of recessive genes. But yeah, so for today's episode, I just wanted to go through 3 genes that we work with personally and talk about some of the other genes that act very similarly to them. So I'll run through them one more time. It's just a recap here. This is a desert ghost. It's recessive. It's a color mutation, and it makes this yellow color, and they turn kind of a silvery, creamier color as adults. Beautiful animals, and looks fairly similar to the desert, which is a codominant gene, and the Sahara, which looks very similar to this and is also recessive. We have Ultramels, another recessive. This is a T positive albino, just like the caramel albino or the monarch. And the monarch looks a little bit different. I don't want you to think this is exactly the same, but it's a very similar look to this, a little darker. So there's that. And then the lavender albino, another recessive gene. Looks similar to the albino, especially as babies, similar to toffees, candies. But the lavender albino is not compatible with an albino. If I bred this to an albino female, I'd get double hets. They'd look normal. So it's definitely worth working with both albinos and lavender albinos, because you can do different things, especially as adults. These guys as adults are awesome. And that's it for today's episode. It was just a real simple, wanted to pull out some snakes and talk about the genetics behind them, and the different projects that people are working on that might look similar to these, so that when you see a monarch or a Sahara in the future, you kind of know, oh, it's like a desert ghost or an Ultramel or whatever it may be. And again, they're all recessive, they're all beautiful, and we are working with them here at the Reptile Barn, and we invite you to keep tagging along on these episodes as we talk about different topics within ball python genetics. Thank you very much.